in our solar system, on all its planets and the sun, and then those living on it, namely ourselves, are shifting likewise. Now, the shift also means that we are changing how we absorb our energy fields, how we interact with one another, and we begin then to discover just exactly how unified we are, that as a fully conscious being, when we achieve that, we're actually going to be two people in one. We're going to be a collective, and we're going to be an individuated version of that collective. So we exist on these two levels at the same time. We're also going to be unifying the physical level and the spiritual level. So they're no longer, this is that thing and the other thing is the other thing. It's just one whole thing, which is the energy and spiritual energy of life. We no longer have any veil which says that there are differentiations. So as a result of all of that, as we move toward one, being a more unified being, two, seeing ourselves as a collective unified being, we begin to see the importance of spirit, that there is indeed a divine plan, and that we have a position, a place in bringing that forth and unfolding it. So that's what is happening to us all right now. So the thing we are noticing more and more is that the old limited conscious concepts of economy, government, and our social-cultural programming no longer works for us. We begin intuitively to see that we need something different, something richer, something fuller, something able to give us more information, something that will allow us to interact with one another in a more free and open manner. So if you look at the world around right now, you see that the old systems are not working. People are looking desperately to find new system that meets the criteria of what we've just been describing. So what is happening is there are nations in this world, the non-aligned nations, that have always been downtrodden upon, who do not feel an allegiance to this system as it now exists. They see themselves as victims. They want to end that victimhood. They want to become part of a unified field of nationhood on this planet. The other thing that's happening is that the economic system has always been limited in the amount of monies it can create, and that the point of origin of creating that money has always been this special group at the top. That group at the top is now seeing that its degree of power, its ability to control and take charge, is lessening, because how it used to do it was with a military or a consciousness intervention that allowed them to stay in charge. That intervention on many different levels is no longer working, because all the people together on this world are beginning to see, most importantly, that they are part of a greater whole, and that each one of them has the right, certain basic rights, sovereignty, and that these rights, these sovereignty, can only come with freedom. And so the key word, as I said at the beginning, in this whole reality right now is freedom. We are moving toward a massive need, that is one by everyone on this planet, to have free and complete and open and sustainable life. They do not wish to be held back. They do not wish to allow the resources on this planet to be delved up and divided up by people who have no concern whatsoever for what they are about. And they do no longer want to be able to look at a military solution as the only way of solving these problems. They see there needs to be something else. Now, as part of the divine plan to unfold what now needs to happen on this planet, they have brought in what I like to call the galactic option. What that simply means is there needs to be a higher level of final choice that allows the majority to tell the vast, powerful minority that its basic way of looking at the world is no longer not relevant. Not only no longer relevant, but no longer has the ability to suppress the rest. So the result of all of this is that they are beginning to see this. They are testing the waters, so to speak. One of the things they've been trying to do for the last year is create a massive disaster, a war of international and worldwide complications, the so-called World War III option. And it hasn't happened yet, and I feel very deeply, because of what is going on with the galactic option, that it will never happen. So what is going on? Next month, all the banks in the world need to, because it's the start of the new year, need to make restitution to one another. There's going to be a banking bloodbath. Another thing that's happening is with central banks, same thing. So what is happening on this planet right now is economically we are on the verge of a massive economic collapse. Now that needs to be changed. This is where the galactic option and those tied in to the Ascendant Masters with the so-called, what I like to call sacred secret societies, are doing right now. There needs to be alternatives in play to allow, when all this disasters happen in January and February, to allow for a new world to come forth, to have it happen as easily and with a minimum amount of catastrophe as possible. This is now all shaping up. We see a world right now where international courts are basically getting ready to say, as they've already preliminarily indicated, to say that the basic economic system that runs this planet, namely the Dumbarton-Oaks system and all its aspects, is no longer viable, and that the banking system that was built up under it is fraud. That means that we can then have a clearing out of the first major part of creating a new economic system, which is to level the debt problem, which means we basically forgive internationally and locally debt. The second thing that has to happen is a new banking system has to be created. That has already been in the works. There's a thing called Basel III, which has high degrees of transparency in it and limits and pretty well prevents a lot of the hanky-panky that has been going on in international banking for centuries. The other thing that's happening is, politically, this system has reached a point where it is no longer really mirroring what the governance that it's supposed to have is doing. In other words, constitutionally, these governments are not kosher. In other words, they are not living up to what the documents that the people and themselves made long ago to make their governments and their power be relevant. That is no longer happening. So we are now at the verge where the legal relevance of government and the economic power of the economic system are fading away. So what is about to happen on this planet is a grand change. It's a grand change not only in consciousness, which is inevitable and is rolling along in this world, but it's a change in government, and it's a change economically. And it also indirectly will lead to social economic change, because a lot of things that are taken for granted in various societies around the world are going to be looked at in a new way based upon the high level of transparency. In other words, the agreements to look at information and history that before has either been shoved under the table or basically not been made available. All of this is now happening. You also have in science the similar type thinking. A whole new paradigm in science is occurring right now. So what we see is a basic change in how our system goes on in all levels, economically, politically, and also social, economically, scientifically, and et cetera. We are seeing a massive change, a whole new reality being brought forth to this world. And on top of that, we have the galactic aspect, which is we are being told we are no longer alone, we are not unique. There are a whole bunch of basic assumptions that our societies are based on that now have to be looked at again, have to be re-examined, and have to be changed as necessary. So all of this is, we have now reached a point of great change. So in many ways we could say, as the minds have said, this is the end of time. This is the end of this long period of time that we've gone through. It's time for a great change. And that's really what the Mayan thing is all about. It's saying that time, which is actually experienced by all of us, is about to be experienced by all of us in a brand new way. And the things we've been talking about are the basic fundamental points that are going to be changed right now. So we are in the midst of a giant, incredibly enormous, planetary, silent revolution, which is going to change not only ourselves, but everything around us that we take for granted as being, this is what our society, this is what the economics or the political aspects of our society are all about. It's all about to be shifted and changed.
Now, there is a caller that had a question for you. It's on a mundane level. She said she's been thinking about buying a home. Should she put everything on halt until this change takes place, or should we just go on as normal?
Go inside. Tell her to go inside and feel what feels right. I mean, really go on an inner journey and examine what you feel is right. I can't tell you anything, because you can't look at this with your head. You have to look at this with your heart. You have to say intuitively, this is the moment that has been created by my life contract to do this. If it's not, say this is not the time, and then act accordingly. Don't use your head right now. Use your heart. Go inside. Go on a journey to understand what is right with the environment you're living around in and what is not, and what changes need to be made, and then do it. I'm not going to really do any kind of pronouncements here. I'm just going to say that.
Thank you.
Okay, Sheldan, let me just let people know. I kind of touched base with you about a week ago, and this morning, and what I found was someone had emailed me that there were 2 moons that were sighted in Australia, and I just, I always think of Photoshop being done on when they have pictures out, and so I really wanted to know if this was really a real picture, and you actually said it was, but that there were other circumstances. So would you please just kind of describe a little bit, and because there was a 2-moon system in the past, and and you seem to think we'll be going back to that. So can you just kind of talk about that briefly?
Well, what that was just a phenomenon. It's a planetoid. I'm not going to go into orbits and when these things were sighted last time and all that. What we're just going to tell people is, yes, that happened. It was a planetoid, there are large asteroids or planetoids, as they're called, that exist in clusters all around our planet and throughout the solar system. And they exist, many of them, in very specific orbits when they come into reaction with our moon and on our Earth here, our own planet, from time to time. And that's just all that was right now. That's all I'm going to really talk about. I'm not going to get into the other things, science, et cetera, of it. What is needed is to just know that happened. And secondly, as you said, one time in the distant past of this planet, when Lemuria was up, we had, because we were a fully conscious world, we had 2 moons. These moons were roughly around 180 degrees apart from one another. They were used at various times to either sink the continent of Lemuria, and later indirectly the Atlanteans created a situation where they sunk themselves. And that got rid of the 2 moons. They wound up crashing into the Earth. And during the course of all of this, when Lemuria went down to keep the 2 planets up, they brought in an artificial moon from former times. I'm not going to get into the history of that moon, but anyway, that's the moon that's going around our planet every day that we see at night, and at times in the early morning or late evening. So what we have right now is a system that is moving back toward being a 2-moon system, and as our planet is moving back to being a fully conscious world. This world needs to be reunified. Right now we have a 3D reality on the surface and a 5D inner reality. Because of that, there's all kinds of lines of declination, of demarcation between the gravity fields of the inner Earth and the gravity fields of the outer Earth, the surface world. There's all kinds of strange phenomena that cannot be quite created properly by science to look at it and see what's going on in the atmosphere, etc. Once we can reunify this world, all that particular problems will go away. What is needed for us to understand right now, the most importantly understand, is that we are in a shift, that this shift is a physical shift, it's a consciousness shift, and it's a shift that will allow us to move from being beings that are largely isolated from the other intelligent beings in this vast universe to ones who are in daily contact with them and who have a complete and total understanding of exactly how the universe got put together and where it's going. What is the divine plan and how does it unfold? That's where we're going. We were once there. We've gone into a side showed journey of limited consciousness. We've learned a lot of wisdoms. We're now going to use those wisdoms when we become fully conscious